Gaurav Tiwari founded the Indian Paranormal Society, investigating over 6,000 reports of the supernatural. He built his career stepping into the darkest environments imaginable, searching for empirical proof of the unknown. In July 2016, immediately following his final investigation in Delhi, Tiwari was found dead under mysterious circumstances. His sudden death, coming at the peak of his career, presents a deeply unsettling puzzle. This flowchart demonstrates Tiwari's investigative methodology. He approached every case as a skeptic, using a diagnostic filter that prioritized medical science. Before he ever considered a paranormal cause, he looked for a clinical explanation. He actively screened subjects for psychological diseases like schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder. He knew that the symptoms of these conditions, hearing disembodied voices or exhibiting distinct personalities, were often misidentified as demonic possession by terrified families. Tiwari rooted his entire practice in clinical evaluation. That reliance on science makes the unexplainable nature of his final days a terrifying paradox. By July 2016, Tiwari's physical and mental health had shifted significantly. His team watched as their typically confident leader became increasingly anxious and withdrawn, losing the composure he was known for. He eventually admitted to his team that he felt a negative energy living inside him. He described a force that actively prevented him from resting, telling his colleagues it felt as though the energy was simply waiting for him to surrender. During this period of physical weakness, the society received an urgent distress call from the Janakpuri neighborhood in Delhi. A family reported that their young daughter was screaming uncontrollably and exhibiting violent, inhuman behavior. Despite his severe depression and exhaustion, Tiwari insisted on leading the investigation personally, overriding his team's concerns for his health. Before he even entered the Janakpuri house, the line between a clinical depressive breakdown and a genuine spiritual attack was blurring within the investigator himself. When the team arrived, the violent screams of the girl echoed into the street. But the exact moment Tiwari entered the apartment, the screaming stopped. The team deployed cameras and EMF meters across the floor plan to establish a baseline. Typically, they might record a single glitch, but here, every camera flashed simultaneously, while EMF meters recorded intense data spikes clustering directly outside the girl's bedroom door. This synchronized technological failure provided hard, physical data that could not be easily dismissed by Tiwari's usual psychological explanations. Tiwari stepped into the bedroom alone. The girl sat perfectly still on her bed, looking up and smiling, as if acknowledging a familiar connection. She spoke directly to him, claiming he takes spirits with him everywhere he goes, and that on this day he would take one more. During this exchange, Tiwari reportedly heard a second distinct voice speaking from directly behind him. The veteran investigator froze in a state of unprecedented terror. To resolve the case, Tiwari performed his trademark closing ritual. He verbally invited any malevolent entities to leave the family alone, and instead attach themselves to him. By acting as a spiritual lightning rod for the family, Tiwari placed his own fragile psychological state directly in the center of the investigation. Tiwari returned home at 1:30 a.m. He told his wife he could see black shadows laughing at him, shadows he believed were waiting for his death. On the morning of July 7, 2016, his routine appeared normal. He checked his emails and sat with his family before going into the bathroom to bathe. A short time later, his family heard a loud thud and found his body. He had died from asphyxiation. This timeline illustrates the official police finding, a straightforward case of suicide. Law enforcement pointed to the immense psychological toll of investigating 6,000 dark cases without adequate mental health support. In this clinical view, the extreme stress simply led to a fatal breakdown. However, a second timeline emerged from the accounts of his family and team, who argue that the suicide was driven by the entity encountered in Janakpuri. They cite the synchronized camera flashes, the EMF spikes, and Tiwari's uncharacteristic terror during the final encounter as evidence of an external influence. The man who dedicated his life to using science to explain the supernatural died in a way that erased the line between a broken mind and a haunted reality, leaving behind a mystery that cannot be solved with logic alone.